100 men in a support group of about 700. But the number of affected men could be much higher because they are too ashamed or scared to come forward. Retired Major Kashmil McKenna is a lawyer who now represents many military members, including Rachel, who feel the internal armed forces justice system has failed them.
Most members of the Canadian Forces assume that a legal officer with the JAG automatically represents them. The truth of the matter is that no. The legal officer is there to represent the organization and to advise the chain of command.
So you're scared to report it in the first place, and then when you do, there is a fear that if you push things along too quickly, then that could ultimately sabotage your career.
The moment you bring a grievance like that, and the people who are supposed to be the one who are going to mold and shape and advance your career are all implicated, where does that leave you? It leaves you where Rachel is. Rachel has been a master corporal for 23 years. For 23 years.
And for nearly half that time, she's been fighting the Canadian Armed Forces, watching everyone around her get promoted, except her.
So being raped and sexually assaulted and sexually violated repeatedly by members, some of the same rank, many superior to me, was bad enough. Reporting a few of these incidences has significantly worsened the pain that I've felt from those types of sexual assaults and violations. I cannot describe or capture in a snapshot of time the horrific, far-reaching torment that I've been subjected to for coming forward.
It is up to the Canadian government to impose or order the military to change the way sexual misconduct is handled, even with a major class action lawsuit against the Department of National Defense with over 13,000 claims. The Deschamps report in 2015, the Fish report in 2021, even a third review by retired Supreme Court Justice Louise Arbour that began in April 2021. The government, until now, has yet to clean up the military.
We do need to build trust in the Canadian Armed Forces. There is a crisis of confidence.
Newly appointed Minister of National Defense Anita Anand has a monumental task. She agreed to an exclusive in-person interview with W5 and announced a major shift in how cases of sexual assault in the military will be handled.
I think it's fair to ask you, victims to whom we've been speaking to have described a culture that is toxic, a culture of cover-up. What do you tell victims who have lost faith, who've lost trust, who feel betrayed?
I actually have been meeting with victims myself over the past week and a half since I have been implemented in this role. And I recognize that the problems are severe. They are pervasive in the armed forces. I'm fully aware of the deep-seated issues in that institution. My role, and the reason I believe the Prime Minister appointed me in this position, was to chart the path forward, acting on the recommendations of Madame Deschamps, Mr. Fish, as well as Madame Arbour, that we are going to make sure that victims of sexual misconduct have the ability to have their cases tried in the civilian system.
I'm trying to get a sense of when that will happen. You say it will be immediate, but victims out there are wondering when. Are we talking weeks? Are we talking months? Are we talking years?
What we are doing is taking Madam Justice Arbour's recommendations and, having just received the letter, beginning to ensure that they are implemented right away. I am loath to say before the end of the year because I'm not the type to overpromise and underdeliver. And so when we have a timeline on the precise dates of implementation, I will come back and I will set those out in full.
With no timeline to move any of her cases to a civilian court, Rachel's message is clear.
I'd like people to know the truth and actually understand what it costs for members to come forward. And nobody should have to serve in the capacity that I have in fear Fear of being raped, fear of being assaulted, fear of being targeted, fear of being punished for coming forward.
CTV's W5.
Nowhere in the civilian world would it be okay if your boss sexually assaults you.
Canadian soldiers fight for justice on the home front.
The rape happened in broad daylight.
And it's happening now, and it's still happening.
How are you supposed to defend your country